Hey everyone, Rascally Rasmus here. Today we're going to talk about some more tips and tricks for Core Keeper, and at the end of the video we're also going to talk about some tips and tricks that you guys have left in the comments of all my previous videos. I really appreciate it. There's some great tips in there, some things I at least did not know about, and so we're going to share them here at the end. And with that, let's get straight into my tips for the day. I think everybody knows this: when you die in Core Keeper, you have to run up to your tombstone, and by the time you get there, your inventory is basically full, and when you pick up your tombstone, there's a bunch of stuff on the ground. And this often happens because that things don't actually restack when you pick up your tombstone, so you end up with multiple stacks of the same items like this. I just recommend that you use the sword button because that will take care of it real quickly. You can also use the R keybind, it will do the same. Similarly, you can also hold the N key on the keyboard and then just click things and you will drop them on the ground. And lastly, you can also use the delete key on your keyboard to quickly delete stuff. And you can just keep pressing it and it will keep deleting items. I also figured we should talk some more about permanent health increases. I've already talked about 4 of the items that can permanently increase your health in Core Keeper in my first tips and trick video, but I figured we should really talk about the remaining 5. The first one of these is the Paradise Fruit Basket, which increases your health by 50. You can find this in a scene up in the Asia's Wilderness. I'll show you a picture of the scene here on screen so you know what to look for. It should be noted that only one of this scene can spawn per world, so if you're multiple people, you should go to multiple worlds to hunt for it, so you can all have one. Next up, we have the Atlantean Worm, and this is found in the Sunken Sea biome, and it's swimming around. To find it, you can craft a scanner for it here at the holopod thing, and you also need a summoning item. This summoning item is sold by the merchant that spawns from the nuclear battery, and it's this one, the bait pillar. You just place this down next to, or pretty close to where the Atlantean Worm is, and then he'll come up to fight you. And to get the nuclear battery, you need to defeat an arena up here in the Shimmering Frontiers, one of the alien arenas. Once you've defeated one of those, you should get a nuclear battery, and you can get the merchant. Next up, there's an item that you can only get from fishing in lava in the Desert of Beginnings, in the lava sub-biome here. Anywhere in lava will do. You just keep fishing till you get it. You just need to make sure you have high enough fishing skill to be able to catch fish in lava. This item permanently increases your health by 100, and you can just keep fishing and you can get multiple of them. So if you want to get some for your friends too, that works. Also in the Desert of Beginnings, actually also in the lava areas, you can get the Splendid Amalgam, which is another scene, only one per world. So again, if multiple people, multiple worlds to get more of them. This one increases your health by, I believe, 40. It should also be said that defeating Druidra, the Hydra boss from Asia's Wilderness, will permanently increase your health by 10%. The last permanent health increase to get is from the secret boss in the passage. Urschleim, he's called. He also drops an item that increases your health by 100. He travels all the way around the world in a big circle. And so if you wait long enough anywhere in the passage, you'll eventually encounter him, as long as you're somewhat in the middle and not standing all the way out by the side. And that's it for the permanent health increases, which brings us to a little thing. And it's just something I never realized in my first playthrough, and that is how you can actually place conveyor belts under your train tracks. I would always be placing them next to my train tracks in my previous game, and so I would have to dig out additional paths. So I just wanted to call this out in case somebody like me had not realized that this is something you can actually do. So I also figured that it might make sense to talk about the best way to level up your skills in Core Keeper, because leveling up your skills in Core Keeper can be quite the hassle, to say the least, depending on what skill we're talking about. Generally, 1 instance of the activity equals 1 experience gained. So it doesn't matter how good a fish you catch or how good a crop you get. What matters is how many fish you catch, how many times the instance happens. So for combat skills especially, what you're looking for is hitting as many enemies as possible and as often as possible. So this means high attack speed, high frequency of hits. You want to attack fast. So for minions, you want as many minions as possible so you can hit as many times as possible. And something that's really good for this is the stone boys, the stone mushrooms. Since when they're in their stone form, they take 1 damage at a time only, so you can keep hitting them. It takes a long time for them to die. You can see if I go to my Stormbringer setup, this is basically just free. It goes for all the combat styles that you want fast attacking weapons. So for melee, Stormbringer is best with 5 attacks per second. For mage, it's not the Scholar Staff as I've taken for some reason, it's the Arcane Staff. For ranged, I'm not quite sure, but the Void Gun is a good bet just because it hits multiple enemies at once. And for minions, I like the Tome of the Deep, as you can kind of just stand and they will circle around and hit the enemies. And when you have all 9 out, it goes really fast. So one way to do this is to just find these stone mushrooms out in the world and dig around them, kind of trap them here. Alternatively, you can use a Materializer and pop in a stone mushroom figurine into it. These you get from the alien arenas as well in the Shimmering Frontier. It's actually where the mobs spawn from when you're doing the arena. Afterwards, you can dig them up with your shovel. And once you put a figurine into it and provide electricity, there's wire under the conveyor belt here, they will just keep spawning indefinitely. So as you can see, I have a slime figurine and a mushroom figurine in these two, and when they die, they will immediately materialize. As for the materializers, it should also be mentioned that these enemies do not drop loot. So this is not a mob farm, this is just a way to level your skills essentially. It should also be mentioned that ideally I would have even more of the stone mushroom boys standing here, but I've only gotten 2 figurines, so this is what I had to work with. For mining, I'd recommend using the Stormbringer all the way. I know in the past it was recommended that you hit the right amounts of mining damage to not break the walls too fast and you could just keep hitting with your fist. But with how fast the Stormbringer attacks, I think this weapon is a no-brainer in terms of leveling mining. Just go around and mine everything with the Stormbringer. Obviously still as much attack speed, as much mining speed as possible, that's great. As for running, you get experience per tile traveled, so running is really just about as much movement speed as possible so you can travel as fast as possible. As for vitality, you level this up by defeating enemies, and so I'd recommend just playing the game and you defeat enemies out in the world, but if you really want to power level vitality, I'd recommend maybe setting up a mob farm and don't put traps in it, so you can stop by every once in a while and then just annihilate all the enemies and level your vitality skill, but also your combat skill as a bonus. Speaking of combat skill, it should also be said if you're using Stormbringer for your combat setup, I'd recommend that you level melee before you level ranged, because with Stormbringer you'll also get some ranged experience here and there. So level melee first and then do ranged after. As for the mob farms, I don't have a video on it, but there's great videos from other creators, so go check those out and remember to drop them a like and all the good stuff. As for crafting, my recommendation is, as I've talked about in a previous video, craft as many stone bridges as you can. Just craft as much stuff as possible. Technically with crafting, when you craft more complex recipes, you do get more experience, but it's not worth the material cost, in my opinion, compared to just crafting the cheap stuff. You can also consider setting up a wood farm. I have a tiny one here. This will obviously give you an infinite source of materials as long as you wait long enough. I'd recommend, again, check out other creators' videos. There's some great videos out there. And yeah, remember to drop a like on their videos if they help you out. As for cooking, it's kind of the same story. You get 1 experience per cooked item when you take it out of the pot. So for cooking, just craft a bunch of cooking pots and place them next to each other and fill them up with whatever you can cook. Gardening is, again, kind of the same story. You get experience when you harvest the crops. I'd recommend that you set up sprinklers, obviously, like I've done, and I'd recommend using the Scarlet Hoe. It makes it very easy to take out a whole field at once. I don't know with farming if you get extra experience if you get extra harvest. But since you're doing it anyways, I definitely recommend wearing a petal ring or 2 petal rings really and a farmer's hat, whatever you can to increase your harvest size, as this will also help you with leveling cooking regardless. And maybe somebody in the comments know if you actually get extra experience from larger harvest. If so, please let me know. Lastly, we have fishing, and fishing is a bit of a grind to level. Less so now that you don't have to do the minigame, but still quite the grind. You level fishing, 1 experience per fish or other item caught, and so the idea is just to catch fish as fast as possible. So if you really just want to power level, you should be fishing in the starting area water, as you will catch fish faster here than you would in water from the passage, for instance. That being said, I do recommend fishing somewhere where you also get something valuable at the same time. So figure out where you want to fish. For instance, if you haven't gotten the health increase from the lava yet, then maybe consider fishing in lava. As for the actual fishing skill, in my experience, it doesn't seem like, I've done some testing and it doesn't seem to do very much anymore. You do need a certain amount of fishing skill to be able to fish in certain waters. And in my testing, it was slightly faster with higher fishing skill, but it was very minimally so. What does matter is using bait. Use some kind of bait like the spicy bait, which makes you fish up stuff faster, because this is actually noticeable and will be meaningful in the end. And those are the tips that I have for you today, but I have a bunch of tips from you guys to you guys. So yeah, let's get into it. I was going to call out all your names, but I think it'll just be too long a video if I start doing that. And besides, you know, I'll butcher your names. The first tip here was craft recall idols. It's something I've been very bad at myself, but here by the core, after you defeat Gorm, you can craft recall idols very cheaply. Do yourself a favor and start using the recall idols, because it's such a quality of life. Next up, I got the tip, craft a bucket. It's something I for some reason have just not experimented with, but this is actually a really good tip. If you craft a bucket here at the iron workbench, you can go to any kind of water and you can pick up the water. There are some limitations, some waters don't work, but for the most part you can pick up most waters and bring them back to base. So strongly recommend doing that as well. It's very chill to be able to sit here and fish for passage fish instead of up in the passage where you're constantly attacked by the enemies. I also got the tip of if you're not using multiple equipment setups, then remember that you can use your other equipment setups as extra storage. This can be very helpful early on in the game. And the same kind of goes for your delete slot. This is also really just an extra storage slot. Just be careful that you don't accidentally delete something that you need. Then a few of you have also called me out for using generators all the time whenever I'm powering my drills. And you're absolutely correct. I had no idea, but apparently levers generate enough electricity that you can just use a lever instead of a electricity generator. So the lever generates, I think, 13 units of power, whereas the generator provides 25, and a drill takes 2 units of power for reference. So a lever is more than enough for most stuff you're doing, and it's quite a bit cheaper than the generator. So thank you so much for that tip as well, guys. It's great. I'm gonna go through these a bit quickly. You can use a shovel to dig up vases and other crates, stuff like that, to not clutter your inventory. They won't break, and instead you'll just get them in your inventory, and you can put them down at a later time and break them there. So if you're doing a bunch of those, that's a good tip. A lot of you have commented and said for the music stuff, you can just drill through the walls next to the door, and you're absolutely correct, guys. That would have been awesome to have had in the video. Thank you so much for the comments. A lot of you have also said if you don't have enough mining power, you can use bombs, or you can use the drill, same as you do the waypoints, to get them up early on or break through early on. And yeah, it's a great tip. I wish I'd put it in the video. I unfortunately didn't. I still think the musical instruments hold some value personally, because I just like using them. I think it's fun, but also there's something to just carrying around one musical instrument instead of just carrying around a bunch of bombs and drills and a lever. But I absolutely recognize that it's a lot easier to just dig your way through or use bombs. In general, I underutilize bombs quite a lot. So yeah, thanks so much for that one. Somebody's also suggested that you should carry around a portal with you in case you find something interesting. You can just pop down the portal immediately instead of having to go back and put down a portal. This is also a great tip, something I'm pretty bad at doing myself too. I've also gotten the comment to use the Distillery Table to convert slimes or ground slime into slime. This is a great tip, both for the obvious, you can craft more potions, but also for when you're looking for the other slime bosses, the elemental slime bosses, if you will. It can really help with getting to the required amount for the scanner quicker. Getting a mining setup is also a good tip. So I do that myself too. I really like having a mining setup. Somebody's also pointed out how if you're unlucky with getting the Amber Larva, the health increase items from my first tips and trick video, you can also farm Gorm for it. He has a pretty low drop chance, but you can farm him. So it's obviously very easy to farm Gorm repeatedly and just see if you can get it that way instead of running around all over hoping you'll find one. So great tip here too. Somebody's also pointed out that you don't in fact need to put floors down in the vendors' houses. So thank you so much for pointing that out. I had no idea. I thought it needed floors. For the last 2 tips, one of them is remember to take the boss chests with you after you defeat the bosses. They're obviously great for a lot of storage. So this is a very good tip, very worthwhile remembering doing. And also somebody's commented and said, remember that cattle don't respawn. So if they're killed by enemies in your game and you haven't gotten some cattle back to base, you can, in theory, run out of specific types of cattle in your world and have to go hunting in other worlds. So it can be a pretty good idea to pretty early on in your game try to secure 2 of every cattle type so you can have reproducing cattle. And that's going to do it for this video today, guys. I'm really sorry if I've forgotten to credit someone. There's a lot of names here. Anyways, I appreciate all the comments and all the tips. It's been so awesome learning from you guys, so I really appreciate that. And please keep sharing tips with me. It's great. So anyways, thank you so much for watching. If you liked the video, of course, consider liking and subscribing, all the usual stuff. Thank you so much. Have a very nice day. Until next time.